I want to welcome you back to Enemy of My Truth. And in this week's episode, I want to talk a bit about something that so many of us in this healing space quietly face. And that is what it means to pivot when your work no longer inspires you the way that it once did. You know, as healers, our work is woven into who we are. It's not just what we do. So when that spark begins to dim inside of us, it can feel really confusing, even unsettling. You might ask yourself, have I lost my passion? Am I letting people down? And who am I if I'm not offering what I always have? Like, who am I? All those things just stir up so much fear of the unknown. And you know, pivoting isn't just about changing the services you offer. It's really about getting honest and honoring, that deeper call and truth inside of you, even when it leads us into the unknown, because to stay in that uninspired state is just not aligned for who we are. We can only do that for so long, and it can stir up fears about stability, about clients, and about our identity. But, beneath all of that, there's always going to be that quiet invitation that's asking you to grow, to evolve, to expand and become that next version of yourself that's waiting for you. And we don't know until we go there and we step into it. So in today's episode, I want to lean into that space with you. The messy, the in-between place of not quite knowing what's next that we've all been to. And if you are somebody new into this space, about to get into your healing journey, listen to this. Because we've all felt it and we've all had to start somewhere and take that chance. But trusting that the lack of inspiration is also not a failure. It's actually the opening and an invitation to something new for you. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. I was talking to a colleague a few weeks ago who's in the healing space. And they were talking about how they were feeling more and more uninspired to do the work that they originally stepped into. And it made both of us pause as we reflected on our own journeys and the healing work that we're doing today. And, I feel like when we look at what inspires us and what doesn't, that inspiration tends to be the barometer as to letting us know where we're at in our lives, but more particularly in the work that we're doing. Because there's nothing worse than not feeling inspired by the work you're doing, and especially talking about being in the healing space, whatever that looks like for any of us. Is that through meditative practice, breath work, psychic mediumship, Reiki healing, shamanic, past life regression, there's so many, areas that we step into to offer healing. And what's interesting that I have found for myself is the practice that brought me into the healing space is not really the practice I'm doing today, 100%. And I think when I was going through this whole process of building my healing space, of becoming a Reiki practitioner, and that's what I offered, to evolving and stepping in and accepting the fact that I can work psychically and I am a medium, it almost felt like this sense of guilt that I wanted to move away from Reiki because I just didn't feel as basically inspired, that I wanted to step into this work that was calling to me and at the time was challenging me. That there is this sense of work that calls to you that's a little unsettling because there's the unknown with it. That the Reiki practice that I held and that I was offering was wonderful, and the people I was able to meet and connect with. But this need within me to push myself, it's as though it was beyond me because it put me in positions of getting really uncomfortable, doing public psychic medium demonstrations in front of 20 to 30 people once or twice a month, pushing myself in that uncomfortable place. Yet there was something within me that said, you need to do this. But yet I would look behind myself and say, but this is comfortable. I've established my Reiki practice. It's safe. But it wasn't enough anymore. And I don't know if you feel that way, that you're in an established healing practice that you feel like you're outgrowing. And I think that I see that a lot. I've seen it in myself that we just don't acknowledge that, or there's a lot of fear about what it means to pivot and change because, I would think, I mean, we have so much identity wrapped up in the work that we do for others because for myself, I am the same person inside a session that I am outside. That the healer, if we call and use that word, I don't always love that word healer because I want everybody to know that they are their own healer, a facilitator in healing. And I'm always honored to facilitate someone's own healing for themselves. And so, as I step into that and becoming that person and that Reiki practitioner, changing and pivoting my work was really scary. One of the things too I feel with that is letting my clients down. Would it be received? If I'm unsure about it and I'm nervous, they're going to feel that. And I'm taking a risk. I'm going out on a limb. And anybody in that situation right now, I guess the only thing I can encourage is say that there's no other choice than to go out on that limb because we can't stay in that uninspired state and continue to create the work that fulfills us because our clients will feel that. We know this. And when you start going to work or you start having clients schedule and you find yourself silently, quietly, or maybe loudly, dreading that, what an invitation um, to go inward, especially for us, right? Especially in this space that we have to show up authentically. And, you know, feeling uninspired sometimes for us can feel like we're failing. If I'm not inspired, did I fail the work? Did I step into something and there's that imposter syndrome? Like, well, I tried it for a little while, now it's not working. But I think that's how we have to step into something. We don't know if it's going to work. We don't know if we're going to identify with the work 3 months later, 6 months later, 5, 10 years later. If I look at my progression and I came into this space as a Reiki practitioner that has now evolved from Reiki practitioner, identifying as a psychic medium and stepping into that work and honoring it and building it in the most vulnerable way, learning to figure it out and not always get it right. I mean, you step into psychic work and mediumship, there are more no's than there are yeses. Talk about creating a thick skin. That psychic mediumship is not about you. In fact, being a healer is not about ourselves. It's about the energy and the light we hold for others to have them show up for themselves. And so again, this healing space is not about us. It's about how we show up and what that light looks like for others to be drawn to that, to assist in what they need. So going back, as I'm getting off track with my beautiful, curious mind and with my dyslexia, I'm just going to add in here that a couple things I've noticed, just pivot. Talk about pivoting your practice, stepping into creating my own podcast has brought up so many vulnerabilities for me. And one of them in particular, back to one of my first couple episodes, is around my dyslexia. Is that when I am speaking like I am now, there's this, there's what's happening for me internally is I am sharing how I'm feeling and thinking. And many times I have to search for my words. I don't always have the word that I want to use because with my dyslexia, because dyslexia shows up differently for everybody and how we process words. Sometimes I have to search for words, and that's around poor memory recall. And so I might know a really, really complicated and very advanced word, but I cannot access it to speak it. So I will use a word that's more simple. And so inside of myself, I know this is happening and it's not what I want to say, but it's all I can do to keep the conversation and articulate with those that I'm with, and especially right here now. So stepping into this space and sharing my life and my work and other people that come on, even when I interview somebody, I you'll hear the pauses because I am searching for the word that I want to use and I cannot always find it. And so I've had to say, listen, Anne, it's got to have to be good enough. Because if I was so trying to focus on the perfection of what I say, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. So there's some of that unknown that I want to come back to about as we step into a new practice, as we go into the unknown, as we push ourselves to get really uncomfortable and really vulnerable to where we grow. And so stepping back into what I was saying, if I'm going to remember that now, because my recall will be bad of like, where was I? That we step into this work and we don't know what's going to happen. And stepping into that psychic mediumship for myself, I had so much fear around not doing it right. How would people see me? How would I be received? And I knew that somebody said to me a long time ago that, you know, build it and they will come. And it's a disservice to the collective of not showing up doing the work that you're here to do, because again, the work's not about me. It's for the collective. And whenever I get stuck in my head or I'm afraid or how will this be received, I just really remember that it's not about me. And every time I'm in a session with somebody, whether it's through Reiki, I'm teaching, psychic, mediumship, intuitive guidance, every bit of what brings me there in that space with somebody is the deepest desire for them to see themselves, the deepest desire to, step through suffering and to heal that and allow them to heal that for themselves. And it may not be the best business model if you really think about it, because I always say this, that, the best gift I can give a client is that they don't come in and see me again. There's not repeat business because I've allowed them to see the tools and see their own light and what they need to do to help themselves. And there's no greater joy and inspiration that I have in my work than to offer that. And maybe they don't come back to see me because they think I suck, and that's fine. I'm not for everybody. I am not. You have to find the healer that the healer, the energy worker, whatever you want to call that, where that works for you. But again, it's that imposter syndrome. It's, what if I don't get this right? And we all are going to feel that. So if you're in a space right now and you're hearing this and you are not feeling inspired by your work, really take a step back. And I guess, step into that fear of what does it mean to pivot and change what you're doing. And I understand that our work is our identity. And so then what does that mean? I think the only thing that is constant is change. And as I'm stepping into this new space, going from Reiki practitioner, psychic medium, intuitive guidance, which is what I love, teaching, and now working on my book and creating a podcast that I am fumbling through, trying to figure it out. It's not polished, it's who I am. But when I am connecting with people, I want them to know they're getting the authentic me, all the parts that are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, that we're all just trying to figure it out. And that leads me to this. We have to support one another in the healing space. It's so important to lift each other up, to say, listen, pivot, that we can have more than one energy healer, Reiki practitioner, psychic, medium, yoga practitioner, breath work, tarot, crystal healer, angel. Like, we need a village. And one of the most important things to remember as we are looking at work we want to pivot into, and we say, well, so and so is doing it and they're doing it here. It's a huge reminder that we got to stay in our own lane and create the work that we're here to do, that we are here to do, because no matter what modality you are going to create and nurture and curate, your clients are coming for you. You are the medicine, so to speak. You are the magic. And remember that there are many Reiki practitioners or psychic readers or mediums, but it's the way people feel connected and trust and feel safe to work with you. So please don't discount the value and the energy of who you are. It's the most important piece. And it's why it's even more important that you cannot skirt around the fact when you're not feeling inspired with the work. It's everything. It's everything of what you do to feed who you are, and give yourself permission to pivot. Maybe you start a business and 3 months later, you're like, this isn't it. Maybe it's a year later, 5 years later, whatever that is. Allow yourself to check in with the work and give yourself that grace and that permission to change, to pivot. And you always see, you go to a class or a teacher, like, oh, I really want to learn that. I really am really drawn to that. Go there, do that. Because as you change and pivot, so will your clientele. And that's the beauty of it. And trust that part of it. So that's my little honest conversation today. I think it's an important one. And I think we never have it figured out. That's the whole point, right? The whole point is allowing ourselves to evolve and to change, and to surround yourself with people who support your change. And remember, if you have clients that are, resisting the things that you're doing, that's okay. That just means that there's not an alignment of what you want to offer and what they need. So that's a great invitation for them to maybe work with somebody else, and opens the door for another practitioner of some sort. So you are what matters. You are the common denominator in what attracts energy, not only in the work that you do, but for who you are and what you want to bring into your life. And be real, get out there, be messy, be imperfect. Know that anybody who's in this healing space has had to walk in their own healing, and that continues each and every day. And that's never going to stop. So give yourself time to pivot, check in, and let this be the nudge if you've been questioning your work, that we all have to make those steps, even when it feels uncertain and scary, myself included, and figure out what sticks and what doesn't, and be okay with failing. Where we fail and fall is really just an opportunity to get more clear. It kind of needs to happen. Sending everybody a bunch of love right now. Thanks for being here if you've made it this far to listen. And we'll be back in about 2 weeks to connect some more. Take care.